I've read a lot about your company, the story behind it. I just would love to, hear why your grandmother started the company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, I'm originally from Liberia, and my father is Liberian, and my mother is Sierra Leonean, and so my grandmother was Sierra Leonean, and she had 4 kids. She had 4 kids and was widowed by the time she was 19. Right, and so she was in the countryside, right, very rural part of Sierra Leone called Shabro Island, town in Shabro Island called Bonth. And so she started making different hair and skin concoctions using like the local ingredients to sell to the missionaries, because the missionaries were that's the period of time where the missionaries were coming into Africa and weren't finding the things that they were used to back in the West, right? And so she just started producing more in bulk, or more units beyond, because everybody would make for their own individual families. And so she just started making more and selling to them so that she could support her kids. And one of the things that I'm most proud of in my family history is that as a result of doing that and selling in that village market and under those extraordinarily difficult conversations, she was back in the 40s able to find ways to send her kids all the way from there and that beginning and that background here to the U.S. to get educated and then back, right? So when you think of the challenges that she went through to be able to do that, and the persistence and the commitment, and this was a time where women had virtually no rights anywhere in the world, and particularly not in that culture and not in that environment. And to be able to raise 4 kids and get them out of that environment and get them here to college and then back is just extraordinary. And so I think a lot of the entrepreneurial drive that we have as a family comes from that ability to be in survival mode and see opportunities within that, and then go after that and realize that.
mm. So I know that you used to travel throughout Sierra Leone and Liberia, and when you'd be in Sierra Leone, you'd sell some of the product.
Yeah.
So, what was one of the biggest lessons that you learned from her?
Yeah.
And
I think the biggest thing that I got from her was just tenacity, just like not really. No obstacle was ever too big or too daunting or too scary or too frustrating or too hard, right? And it would, like you'd sit there and it was hard, right? And it was, but never complaining, never sort of feeling sorry for the circumstance or being regretful about one's lot in life. Just every day getting up and making it happen. I think that that's the thing that I learned, right? Is like everybody, like we all in here have issues and challenges and problems, but there's millions, not just 1 or 2 other people. There's millions of people on this planet that got it way worse, right? And so if you start to let the challenges that you have slow you down, right, then you're really not being faithful to God and the opportunities that He's put in front of you. Just by virtue that we live in this country, right, is an opportunity, right? It's not without its problems. It's got tons of problems, and we can talk about that too. But the fact that we're here and that we have the opportunities that millions of people on this planet don't have was something that I think she instilled in us, yeah.
Love it.
It's probably my biggest lesson from her.
Love it. So when you think about problems, a lot of times people liken problems and suffering. So I have a question. When you think about problems, what's been the biggest problem for you? What's been the biggest test of your greatness? And how have you gone through it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's one single greatest test. I think as each phase of the evolution of our business has had a different test. I mean, I remember when we first started, and I was 20 years old, and we had started selling on the street, and the war had just started in Liberia. Everybody was trying to figure out where to go. There were 12 of us living in a 2.5 bedroom apartment in Queens, and we literally only made enough money to pay the rent and to buy food. And sometimes we didn't have money to do either. But the point was that we were all doing it together, right? My mother would collect the money, pay the rent, buy food, buy gas, and that was it. We lived like that for 3 years. We had a Toyota Privia van. That was, and when you're 20 years old, you got other things you want to do besides sell soap, right? But that's what we did, and that I think was a challenge that we went through that just made us tighter. Another sort of impactful moment for me was we had started to outgrow we were renting storage spaces, right? So we started with one storage and another, then another, then another. Before you know it, we had like a whole row of storage spaces, and so it was time for a warehouse. Yeah. And we started looking for a warehouse. And at the time I was maybe 21, 22. And I'd look in the paper and, see a space that was available, call up, yeah, it's available, come down, oh no, we just rented it. Or, we need 6 months rent, we need 6 months security, first and last month's rent. And so that got very frustrating, going from, Queens, Manhattan, we went as far as Goshen, New York to find a place, and just nobody would rent to us. And one day I see an ad in the paper for in this town called Amityville that I had never heard of. And so I go out there, and standing in the middle of this warehouse is a old white guy, right? And at the moment I walk in and I see him, I'm like, yeah, this shit ain't gonna work. So I walk in with a chip, right? I got an attitude. And as soon as I get within like shouting distance of him, I start, and I'm like, I don't have 6 months rent. The paper said this thing was available. It better be available. And he's like, young man, calm down. What are you trying to do? Right? And I told him what we're trying to do, and he reached in his pocket, he took out the keys, he put it in my hand, and he said, pay me when you can pay me, and he left.
Wow.
And right, and that was so impactful to me. That here was a guy that didn't know me from a hole in the wall, but had I not gone to those other 20 or 25 other places and been rejected, and still got up the next day and went to the 26th place, I would have never had that opportunity. Yeah.
Mercy. Okay. So when you think about perseverance and failure within entrepreneurship, how did it feel after? Actually, not how did it feel. Can you take me back to the moment where, after certain rejections and failures, and once you receive your first sale, if you can take me back to that moment with the interaction
my first
with your
sale
family.
in terms of product?
Yeah.
The first sale was easy. It was like the fifth or sixth sale that was hard, right? Because the fifth or sixth sale, I didn't have no product. The first sale, I had everything that we had made that morning and brought in. And what we were doing was, so you got to remember, this is 1992. Nobody had heard of shea butter. in America. Nobody had heard of African black soap. Nobody had heard of coconut oil in the form that we use it in. And I'm standing out there trying to convince people to buy shea and coconut, and we were selling the shea by the ounce. So here's another really funny story. A 20-year-old black man on a street corner with a scale, a beeper, right, and a bowl of shea, right. And so when we started selling to other street vendors, the way that, and a lot of you here are too young to even know what a beeper. How many of you here don't know what a beeper is? Okay, that's not too bad. Motorola two-way pager?
Yeah.
Nah, you know what I'm talking about, right? But anyway, so the way that we would supply them is that when they run out, they page us, and then we go make the delivery. So you can imagine the cops in Harlem was always on us. So we would weigh it out, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then give it to people. But so the first sale was, first person I ever talked to, all I had to do was just put the shea on her, explain what it was, and she bought it, right? And then other people started buying, and then before you know it, people went to work, and then they came back and they talked about it. So by the second or third day, word started to spread in the neighborhood, and people were coming, and we didn't have enough. Wow. Right? So the first one was easy. It was when you don't have it and you got to explain to people why you don't have it. Mm-hmm. Right? That's hard, right? But we somehow made it through.
Okay, so the transition from having to convince customers, passerbys on the street, to convincing stores and other parties. How did that differ for you? For the entrepreneurs in here who have a product and they're selling them hand to hand. Mm-hmm. How did you make that leap?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Ours is a little bit. Our story is a little bit different in that regard, right? So for us, we were making a product that was very personal to our family, that's very personal to our heritage, and that people didn't understand, right? More than that, retailers didn't understand how to engage with Black people, right? So they thought of us as this monolithic group of people, right? And that just needed relaxers, right? And needed Vaseline, right? It's real,
yeah,
right? And the way they thought that they service us is if you have relaxers and you have Vaseline, and you call it ethnic, you can put it wherever you want, right? So you put it in the back of the store on the bottom shelf. It's dirty. It's you can't see it. But Black people have what they want. They got their own section, even though it's bullshit in there. But that's how they thought about it, right? And so as we started to get, so we started at first with our own table. Then we started selling to other vendors, and we started selling at flea markets and at festivals and at town fairs, and then we started selling at beauty supply stores and health food stores and all of these sort of like underground distribution, right? Nothing formal, nothing structural. It took us 16 years to agree to sell to a retailer, and that was because of these structural and they call them segmentation strategies. I call them segregation strategies. And so to explain to them that me and my family could not be a part of a segregation strategy. So for 16 years we said no. For 16 years we said, until you fix this, we can't put our products here. But every year we'd show up and we'd show them what we have and why we have it, and we talk to them about why they ought to think about us as consumers differently and how they have to position us and represent to us differently. And finally, Target was the first retailer that said, okay, you've been talking all this shit. Show us,
Yes.
right? Show us how you're going to do it. Show us how we do this. And that's when we partnered with them, and we came up with the idea of this natural lifestyle end cap, right? And the other thing that I'm really proud of is that when we had that opportunity, we brought with us 4 other Black-owned businesses, 4 other brands, because we also felt like you can't do it. One brand can't do it. One company can't do it. We've got a community out here that needs servicing, and there are many different approaches and many different need states that we have, and we felt that it was important that we brought other companies with us. And help those companies along with ourselves to develop, right, and to win in the marketplace. And so that's when we set up that end cap with Target, and took off from there.
Love it. So I mean that's awesome. So this weekend I saw Black Panther.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna give any spoilers for those who didn't see it, but I'm just gonna something resonated with me. And when you said that, when you told us about that story, throughout in the movie, there was a line where he said to T'Challa, "You're a good man with a good heart. It's hard and he said, it's hard to be if you're a good man, it's hard to be a king." And when I think about superpowers and whatnot, I think outside of his strength and everything, one of his superpowers was his nobility. And I liken that to you in the sense that
that's a lot of pressure, man.
No. Listen, I say that because, you're social. You have a social mission. You're helping women entrepreneurs internationally. You have an intentional purpose to help entrepreneurs in Africa.
Yeah.
And you answer my email. Like out of all the emails that you get.
Yeah.
So that says something. So, how have you maintained that integrity throughout when you have the pressures of you have all these other pressures?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a couple of things. I think one is I work for my mother. So that's not that's not too hard to do. I don't have much of a choice. But I think the other thing is that, look, I came from an environment where I saw firsthand the abuse that I saw the abuse, right? And then I came here, and at the root of it, it's the same abuse. It's the same deprivation. It's the same disrespect, right? And whether you're in Africa or you're here, circumstances are different. You can measure severity how you want. The reality of it is that you can send all the money you want back to help poor children get an education and eat food there. But there's poor children right here that went to school today with no food, right? And our governments aren't going to fix it for us. Our politicians have clearly failed us in fixing it. The next best option that we have is to fix it our damn selves. Right? And the way that we fix it ourselves is through entrepreneurship, right? It's through, everybody in here everybody in here got a side hustle. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care if you're a professor, you're working at the McDonald's, everybody here has a side hustle, right? Because we are a community of entrepreneurs, but we've been led to, and we've been led to believe that we're not, and we've also been structurally prevented from accessing the tools and the resources that allow us to further that, right? And so what me and my family have done from day one has focused on, our philosophy, we call it community commerce. And basically what it is that you should spend your profits where you make your profits, right? So if I'm making my profits in the Black community, I should reinvest into that community, right? And so once we start to invest in our communities, put our dollars in our communities, and put our dollars in the people in our community so that they too can build wealth once we make it, then we will start to see stronger and stronger communities. And whether it's in Africa or it's here, one of the, there's a lot of commonalities, but one of the most prolific commonalities is the role that women play as the breadwinners in our homes, right? And so we focus in on investing in women entrepreneurs in our communities so that we may build better communities and create wealth, not just create income, right? So that's how we focus on it. That's how we think about it, and that's what we've been driving for 27 years now. And we do all our deals around those principles.
Love it. So last year, about a year and a half ago, we had an interview with some of my students with Richard Branson. And one of the things that we discussed a little bit was passion and business. So for that woman or that man, but since we just talked about women, who is thinking about pursuing that business, what's your thoughts? Passion or the business idea?
I mean, I think, look, sometimes we there's different reasons that people want to start a business or get involved in a business. The most successful businesses are the businesses that are started out of solving a need, right? So we see a lot of businesses of, well, you know what? That person is doing shea butter shampoo, I'm going to do shea butter shampoo. That person is doing orange sweaters, I'm going to do orange sweaters, right? Those businesses that are started that way tend to not be as successful as the ones who have taken the time to figure out where there's a gap, where there's a need, right? And then pour their energy and their passion into solving that problem, right? That's where you get the most creativity. That's where you get the best economics, right? Because it's not a Me Too product. It's something that's unique and it's something that's different. So for me, I like to spend my time with people and on things that are solving problems that exist, right? And if you step back, I mean, I think one of the things that's really great about the time that we're living in with the advent of technology and mobile devices and all of those things is this is our industrial revolution, right? We have the opportunity to build businesses at paces and at rates and at costs far lower than we've ever had. But there aren't people out there who are day in, day out thinking about how they solve the specific needs of Black women, right? So for those of us, I mean, if you want to look at a dynamic, fast-growing economic base and you want to look at where there are lots of needs, take a look there, right? Like, how do you solve her needs? And it can be around family, where, they're the caregivers, not just to their children, but also to their parents, or the grandmother is a caregiver to her child and her grandchild, right? And when you think of all the need states that happen in that dynamic, there's tons and tons of opportunity to build businesses in this. Like, do we really need another soul food restaurant? I mean, I think that's been done, right? But we really need our solutions for how we're living every day. And you can do that through technology, you can do that through products, you can do that through services. But what I tend to like to see, and what I look at in my own business is, Where are there needs in my community that aren't being met, and let me go meet those needs.
So for that person, who's found that idea, they found that need, you all have done an amazing job at product market fit and engaging consumers, and also after your consumers are engaged, compelling them to take action. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when you all were discussing strategies and whatnot. But for somebody who doesn't understand what their strategy is yet, where can they start?
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's exactly it, right? When you're solving a need, it's easy to talk about what you're doing, right? It's easy to get somebody to buy into it. It's easy to get somebody to say, "Damn, you know what? I really need that," right? When you're trying to give them something that's just a different color of something that they already received, that's a bit harder, right? So for us, and if you think about it, solving the need actually develops the strategy, right? Because now you might say, well, then what's the go to market? How do I bring it to market, right? But if you're solving a need, you inherently are creating the strategy around how that product works, how it gets used, who's the audience for it, what is the pricing that makes it attractive. So you go through all, if you're solving a need, right? And then where you have to be careful though is after you've solved that need, aligning it to a go-to-market strategy that allows it to win. So you don't want to take a solution that is priced at $2 and try to sell it at Sephora. That's not going to work, right? But you also don't want to take a solution that's priced at $20 and sell it at Dollar General, right? So you've got to make sure that you're then aligning your go to market with the actual product that you're creating. And I think the other thing is you have to be really, really honest, intellectually honest with yourself about the product that you have created, right? What is its true value to the people that you intend to use it? And that's not just necessarily monetary, right? It's like I talk a lot about the needs that it serves. It's also the additional gaps that it might create or not create. So there's all of these other things that come along with it. But at the end of the day, if you've done your work around what the product ought to be, you're intellectually honest about the value that you've created, your strategy then shows itself.
So I have a selfish question. So one thing that I've seen throughout your journey is the importance of family, the importance of your daughters in your life. So I would love to know how has being a father made you a better entrepreneur?
Well, my daughters don't necessarily think I'm that great of an entrepreneur. So we can start there because they all know how to do this better than me. So I have 4 daughters. And I think one of the most sort of comforting things in this journey has been the fight that I've been fighting on their behalf, right? Which has made it easier and easier for me to follow this North Star that we're following, right? So I didn't want my daughters to be disrespected in a retail environment. And so rather than put product in a retail environment simply because I would get a check, I said no, right? Because when my daughters walk into a retail environment, they should have the same shopping experience as anybody else, period, right? And so that forced me to fight for that shopping experience for them. And I think that made me better. That gave me more conviction, and it gave me more comfort when it didn't work, right? Because I was doing it for the right reasons.
Okay. So, the right reasons. When we think about that, there are different people who have differences of opinions on what's right. So, throughout your journey, I know I've messed up a lot.
Oh yeah.
A whole lot.
Oh yeah.
In the age of the internet and there being advice thrown at you left and right, obviously to be at where you are right now in your career and to have the success that you've had, you've been unconventional. You might have taken a left when somebody told you to turn right.
Yeah.
So, if you can take me back to one of those decisions where somebody told you that no, Rich, that wasn't the right way. You chose that way and it benefited.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a ton of them. I think there's one that's really dear to me and that I try to share with other entrepreneurs every chance I get. So last April, Shea Moisture ran an ad with white women in the ad talking about their hair needs. Who saw that ad? I should have charged it. We could have made more money than Black Panther if we charged admission to that ad, right? So we ran that ad, and Twitter blew up, right? Social media blew up, and there were a lot of people that were very upset. And my own daughter, I hadn't even seen the ad or heard anything about it. And I was in California, and I getting ready for a meeting, and I get a text. I look at it, it's my daughter, and the text says, "Dad, WTF." And I'm like, I told y'all they think they know how to do this better than me. And I'm like, well, that's not the way we talk to each other in this family, so it's got to be. So I call her. I'm like, what are you talking? What is this? And she explains to me that Twitter's blowing up, and that there's this ad. And so she texts me the ad, and I look at it, and immediately I know why everybody's upset. Right now, we've had a company that had grown, almost doubled every year. Right, we had gone from 20 or so employees to over 400 employees in like 3 years. So a lot of stress on the infrastructure, a lot of stress on the culture, tremendous amount of change, and people were upset for a couple of reasons. One is they felt that there was a pivot, that we were making a pivot from serving Black women, and that we're now going to shift our attention. We're no longer going to focus on serving Black women. We're now going to go focus on serving white women. And the argument is that, well, white women have all of these options already, and you're leaving us behind. Another argument was, or another position, I shouldn't say argument, another position was, we supported you as a Black community, and then you made good, and now you're leaving us to go serve somebody else. Another one was, how dare you compare the struggles of a white woman's hair to the struggles of a Black woman's hair, because the challenges that she has around is basically the hair, and for us it could mean the difference between me keeping a job or getting a job. It could mean so there's, and to all of that, the answer was, yeah, we get it and we understand it, right? And that ad should have never been released the way that it was released, and that wasn't the intent, right? So the first thing that we did was we apologized for it, right? I got out there and I said, this wasn't what we intended to do. This was wrong, right? And we corrected it. And I think when you have issues like that, that's the best thing you can do is own it, right? But then you also need to go back and search and find out why. And I just gave you a whole bunch of reasons as to why people were upset. And I also gave you a whole bunch of reasons as to why it happened, right? So nobody saw the ad. People that put it out was a 20-year-old kid who had no idea what he was doing, right? So now do we go and crucify him for having, no, that's not the right thing to do either, because How else is he going to learn? How else is he going to grow? How else is he going to feel nurtured? You make a mistake, you make a mistake. But the piece that wasn't communicated, and the piece that I think became very dangerous to us as a community, is the lack of understanding of the challenges of running a Black-owned business, right, at scale and competing against the rest of the world. When we started this, there were no brands that were focused on serving Black women around the things that they needed. There were brands serving Black women, don't get me wrong, but they weren't focused on serving her needs. You would see, I got this product over here, it was made for this consumer. Oh, you know what? Black market is growing. I'll go take a Black woman, I put her in the ad next to this product. Now I got a product for Black people. Here it is, you go buy it, you spend your $10, your $5 on it, it doesn't work. You don't have any other options, right? That's all you had at shelf. And so we shifted that. And when we started to shift that, we started to see an influx of multinationals competing, right? And so when you look at the way the Black hair care market is set up, you know, it's probably 30% of the business that is done in that category goes to Black businesses. The other 70 goes outside. When Black consumers go to shop, they don't stop and say, I'm going to buy only the Black product, right? They say, I'm going to buy the best product for me, and if it's a Black-owned business, I'm going to support it, right? But they still buy Nivea, right? They still buy Jergens, they still buy Palmer's, they still buy Cantu, right? They still buy, you name it, right? But what the market was telling us was that even though I can go buy a brand in Cantu that copies everything that you do, and I can go buy that brand, it's okay, but you can't go sell to the people that they sell to. What does that say to entrepreneurs? What that says is that we can't grow beyond that 30%, right? The other thing that it says is, you know, we're gonna circle the dollars in our community. Well, if you're buying Cantu and if you're buying Jergens, you're not circulating it in our community. More than that, if we're only circulating our dollars in our community, how's our community gonna grow, right? You've gotta go outside of your community, bring the dollars in, and then circulate it, right? That piece has somehow been missing. The third piece that's been missing has been this idea that monetizing our culture is bad, right? Well, we just talked about Black Panther. Mm-hmm. Disney just monetized our culture. We're all proud of it, we're all excited about it, we're all happy to see somebody do a respectful depiction of us and who we are and where we come from. But at the end of the day, that $700 million has been generated, we don't own that. Wakanda's owned by Disney, right? It's not coming back into our community. So, you know, that experience got me really, really thinking about how do we accelerate change around entrepreneurship and Black businesses in our community, right? And had a profound impact on how I started to see and think about the ways that we as Black entrepreneurs need to step out. So this was a decision that we made that was not one that was popular even with our consumer base, right? But saw the need to do that in order to invest in the very people that were upset with us going out and finding the money to invest in them. And that was simply because nobody had ever done it for them before, right? Today, you know, you step back and you look at it and you can say, yeah, I see where they were going. I see why they did that. And I'll be the first one to say the execution of that ad, I wouldn't do again, but the thought behind it, I would do every day. because unless we start to monetize our culture, we will never truly own it. Right? And that's what, if you think about hip hop, right?
Yeah.
If you just think about, I give this example all the time about who here remembers Carl Kanai? All right? Carl Kanai created the streetwear from our culture, right? He's out of business. Ralph Lauren monetized it. Tommy Hilfiger monetized it. Nautica monetized. I mean, you can go up and down. Timberland monetized it. You can go up until it was no longer ours. So what's wrong with us monetizing our own culture for our own benefit so that we can invest back in our communities? So that's what this movement is about. That's what this mission is about, is that we've got to, we've got to do two things. One is we've got to provide extraordinary product, but the second thing is we've got to figure out how to monetize it. And then the third piece is we've got to reinvest it back into our communities. And that's what you're seeing us do.
Okay, so yeah, you actually, you're putting the money where your mouth is, literally, with the $50 million fund for New Voices Fund.
Yeah.
Which
so it's actually 100, but
yeah.
We want,
Yeah.
What's 50 million among friends?
Yeah. So for women who are interested in that, to learn about that fund, what can they do to find out more information about it?
So just send me a note at rich@sheamoisture.com. We're now setting up the app process and the website and all of that. But if you send a note to rich@sheamoisture.com, I'll make sure that it gets in front of the right people, and they'll get back to everybody with whatever information we need. We expect to start making our first rounds of investments in the beginning of the third quarter, so around mid-year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and okay. So there's a lot of students in here. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in here who might be thinking about taking the plunge. When you decided to take the plunge, when there was a civil war going on in Liberia, did you see yourself being here 5 to 10 years as an 18-year-old?
No, because that's the other thing that's a whole nother story. The way the immigration system works here, we lose a lot of talent, but then on the flip side of it, we lose a lot of talent also by not developing the talent that's born here. So it's not to say that the talent can only come in from outside, as we're not developing the talent here either. But for me, my plan was to go home, right? And what's been wonderful throughout this experience is that Africa is as much my home as America is my home. African Americans are as much my family as Africans are my family. So one of the things you'll rarely hear me use is that term is Africans or African American. I think we're just all black, right? And we're all on this journey together. We just happen to have been divided differently due to no fault of our own, but has been a way of sort of keeping us from collectively having the type of economic and social scale and power that we will have eventually. But we won't do that until we start to develop our own economies and our own communities ourselves, right? So I hadn't planned on staying. It was God's I think God's will for me to be here, and now I get to be both.
Okay. So with your new acquisition of Essence,
that's what y'all really want to talk about, right?
Can you take us into the room and just share with us what made you go from beauty products, hair care, skincare, to to Essence magazine?
Yeah, I mean, it's this notion of our culture, right? It's this notion of owning our culture, right? And I had an opportunity to, there's, when you talked earlier about, zigging while somebody else is zagging and somebody saying this isn't the right way. So we've been on this journey for a while. A few years ago, maybe I think it was 2015, we did a transaction with Bain. Anybody here remember that? Mm-hmm. All right. And I caught a lot of heat for that too, because I was selling a black company to Mitt Romney. Get the fuck out of here. Right? But what that was about was, one, raising capital to scale, right? And two, wanting to be with the best possible brand and institution in the market, and that was Bain. There is no better private equity firm at scale than Bain, right? And that enabled us, that opened doors for us, that allowed us to compete at a high level, that allowed us to leverage their relationships, to build relationships that got us to where we needed to go. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, Romney hadn't been there for almost 30 years before we got there, right? But that allowed us to scale, and it was the first time that a black-owned business had done a deal of that type, because most private equity firms will take a majority stake. We kept the majority stake, and was able to partner them and leverage that, and that opened a whole nother set of doors. And then we got to that stage of, well, what's the next stage of scaling, and what's the next stage of growth? And for us, that was finding a partner that had a global footprint, so that all of these things that we're talking about doing in Africa, all of these things that we want to do here, it took me 25 years. So we've got in our company, we have 16,000 women that produce our shea in Africa, right? That, as a result of what we do, are now living above the poverty line. Their kids are going to school, they have health insurance, they have clean water in these communities, they have warehouses, they have real businesses, they have bank accounts, they have all of that, right? But we had only been able to do that for 16,000 women. I want to be able to do that for 250,000 women in the next 2 years. I couldn't do that on my own. So again, I partnered with Unilever. Got the scale, got the infrastructure, got the resources, got factories all over the world, in particular in Africa. We can scale, we can get to that 250,000 people in the time that we need to, right? So then, what that then led to was, okay, if we're gonna continue to drive this idea of owning our culture, right, then we've got to own the narrative that's developed around our culture and for our culture. Then we've got to start owning the distribution of that narrative, right? And that's where Essence came into the picture, because you're not going to be able to do some of these things that are so necessary in our community if we continue to allow the communication tools to be owned by people that, now there's nothing wrong with it's capitalism. There's nothing wrong with people owning businesses. But at some point, we have to own those businesses at scale as well, if our voices are ever going to be heard on a consistent basis at a high level, and through our lenses and not through somebody else's. And so that's why I did Essence.
Okay. In the next 5 to 10 years, what's your vision?
Brother, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing tomorrow. I think the vision for us has always been the North Star, and that is bringing economic empowerment to black communities through entrepreneurship. And that's what we're going to continue to press on. We're going to continue to find new ways to be able to finance that. Again, the revolution must be financed. It takes money to do this, so we've got to make money. So go buy Shea Moisture, go subscribe to Essence, come to the festival, because none of these things are possible unless we're generating profits, right? It's not even revenue, it's unless we're generating profits. But we're going to continue to push down this economic empowerment road. We're gonna follow women. Women are the ones who lead this for us, and we're gonna invest with them. And that's it. So I think 10 years from now, if we're sitting here and I can say, you know what, we've taken 500,000 women out of poverty in Africa. We've created, through the New Voices Fund, 10 new Black millionaires in America. We've put 1,000 kids through university here in the States. We've put 10,000 kids through vocational training programs in Africa. That will then be considered a success.
So first off, I'm not allowed at Essence Festival. So
I can sneak you in there.
All right, cool. But for those of us in the room who want to continue to see Sundial Brands grow as well as Essence, what can we do?
I mean, I think that's what it's we've got to put our money where our mouth is, right? We've got to, if we're making a product that is superior to what's out there or meets your needs in a superior way, please support it. Don't buy it just because we Black, right? Buy it because we make the best product out there. Read Essence because we're putting out the best content. Come to the festival because we're giving you the best experience. Buy Shea Moisture because it's delivering the best value for your hair and your skin and your needs, right? That's what excellence is about. Excellence is not about you patronizing me because I'm Black, right? It's about you patronizing me because I'm offering you the best product and the best service, right? And I'm Black, right? But we can't, and that's another thing, maybe if I'm, the entrepreneurs in the room, you can't expect us as a community to support you if you're not giving me the best product, right? Start with that, right? Make sure that there's a value that you're creating for me, and make sure it's the best product that's on the market. And then I think we can do business. So, for us, the best way to support is if we're giving you the best product, please buy it. If we're not giving you the best product, we're gonna hear it anyway, because y'all don't spare. But that's the other thing. It's like some days, like it gets hard. I'm like, damn, I wish y'all go talk to the white companies like that. Maybe y'all can go tell them a thing or two. But not the feedback. The feedback is important because it helps us grow. And in your businesses, when you get